We've seen this exact situation play out more times than most people would believe. Two owners, same Japanese car, same engine, same starting point. Something as common as a Toyota Corolla or a Honda Civic. Nothing special separating them on day one. Fast forward a few years and the difference is impossible to ignore. One of those cars is still running the way it should. Smooth, predictable, no constant headaches. The other one, it's already showing signs that something isn't right. It doesn't feel the same, it doesn't respond the same, and in a lot of cases, it doesn't last anywhere near as long as it should. Now, most people look at this and assume something went wrong with the car itself. Maybe it was a bad unit, maybe just bad luck. But from what we've seen, that's almost never the real reason. These outcomes don't appear overnight. They build quietly, over time, through things that seem normal in the moment but change the way a car ages. And once you understand that difference, you stop guessing why some cars last for decades and others don't even come close. Why this was never really about the car. So instead of guessing, instead of blaming the car, let's actually clear this up the right way. Because what you're about to see isn't theory. This is based on patterns we've seen again and again, across cars people trust the most. The kind of cars that are supposed to last without drama, like a Toyota Corolla or a Honda Civic. Here's where most people go wrong. They assume reliability is built into the badge, that once you buy a car like this, you're set for the long run, no matter how you treat it. And for the first few years, that belief feels true. The car handles everything you throw at it. It starts every morning, it drives without complaints, and it gives you no reason to think twice. But that's exactly where the difference begins. Because while both owners are driving the same car, they're not really treating it the same way. One is building a car that will last without even realizing it. The other is slowly wearing it down, also without realizing it. And the important part is this: neither of them thinks they're doing anything wrong. That's why this matters. Because once you see where these differences actually come from, you stop leaving things to chance, and you start understanding what really decides how long a car stays on your side. What you do right after starting matters more than you think. Now, this is where it starts getting real, and honestly, most people don't even think about it. Every single day, both owners walk up to their car, get in, and turn the key or press the button. Same routine, same machine. But what happens in the next few seconds? That's where things quietly split. One owner starts the car, gives it a moment, and drives off calmly. Nothing dramatic, just smooth inputs, no rush. The other starts the car and immediately pushes it. Quick acceleration, higher revs, straight into traffic like the engine is already fully ready. On the surface, it feels like nothing. The car moves, it responds, no warning lights, no drama. But inside the engine, it's a different story. When a car is cold, the oil hasn't fully circulated yet. The parts inside are still settling into proper movement. That's the phase where the engine is most sensitive to how it's treated. Push it too early, and you're creating wear that doesn't show up immediately. But it adds up over time. And here's the thing, this isn't a one-time mistake. It's a daily habit. Hundreds, even thousands of cold starts over the years. One owner keeps things controlled during that phase, and the engine ages the way it should. The other keeps stressing it early, again and again, without realizing what's building underneath. That's how the difference begins. Not with a failure, but with a pattern. The small habit that quietly destroys engines. Now, this is where the difference between those two cars really begins to deepen, and it's not something dramatic or obvious. It's a habit so common that most people stop questioning it after a while, especially once the car starts feeling smooth and reliable again. Both owners understand that oil changes matter. That part isn't new, but what separates them is how they treat that responsibility once everything feels normal. When the engine is quiet and the car is running well, it's easy to assume there's nothing urgent happening under the hood. One owner keeps things simple and consistent. They don't make it complicated, but they don't delay it either. The oil gets changed when it should, the correct grade is used, and filters are replaced without cutting corners. It becomes part of the routine, something that protects the engine quietly over time without needing constant attention. You'll often see cars like a Toyota Corolla or a Honda Civic stay smooth for years when this basic discipline is in place. The other owner doesn't completely ignore it, but the timing slowly starts slipping. A small delay here, a bit of postponement there. It usually begins with a simple thought. It still feels fine, I'll do it later. And since the car keeps running without any immediate issue, that decision starts to feel harmless. Over time, that pattern repeats, and the gap between the two cars quietly grows. What makes this important is what's happening inside the engine during those delays. Oil isn't just there to keep things moving. It controls heat, reduces friction, and creates a protective layer between parts that are constantly working together. As it ages, it loses that ability. It becomes weaker at protecting the engine, even though nothing feels wrong from the outside. By the time the engine starts to feel different, the wear has already been building for a long time. It's not one delay that causes the problem. It's the repeated habit of stretching things just a little further than they should go. And that's how two identical engines built to last begin to age in completely different ways. How most drivers slowly damage their transmission. Now let's move to the part that usually hurts the most when things finally go wrong: the transmission. Not because it fails often, but because when it does, it's rarely a small bill, and it almost always catches people off guard. Both owners are driving the same car in the same conditions, dealing with the same traffic. From the outside, nothing looks different, but if you sit inside both cars for a few minutes, you start noticing how differently they're being handled. One owner keeps everything controlled: smooth throttle, gradual acceleration, no unnecessary pressure on the car when it doesn't need it. It's not slow driving, it's just measured. The other owner treats the car like it should respond instantly every time. Quick takeoffs at signals, pushing the accelerator harder than needed, braking late, then repeating that pattern all day in traffic. The car handles it without complaint, and that's exactly why it feels harmless. But inside the transmission, especially in CVT and automatic systems, that repeated stress starts building heat. Transmission fluid, which is supposed to keep everything cool and operating smoothly, begins to lose its effectiveness over time, and even faster when it's never replaced on schedule. Many manufacturers recommend fluid service around 60,000 to 100,000 kilometers, but a lot of cars go far beyond that without it. At first, nothing feels wrong, then small signs begin to show. A slight delay when shifting, a moment of hesitation when accelerating, or a shift that doesn't feel as clean as before. These are the early warnings most people ignore, and this is where reality hits. Once the transmission starts failing, repairs can easily range between $2,000 to $4,000, and in some cases even higher depending on the car. So while one owner keeps things smooth without thinking much about it, the other is slowly pushing the transmission toward a problem that doesn't show up early, but shows up expensive. One owner pays attention, the other doesn't. Let's slow this down for a moment, because this is where a lot of cars quietly start going in the wrong direction. Not because of something major, but because of how small changes are handled. Every car gives feedback. It doesn't always come in the form of a big warning or a breakdown. Most of the time it shows up as something subtle. A startup that feels slightly off compared to before. A noise that wasn't part of the car's usual character. A vibration that only shows up at certain speeds. Or even a warning light that appears briefly and then disappears. None of these feel serious on their own, and that's exactly why they don't get immediate attention. Now watch how this plays out between the two owners. One of them treats these moments as signals worth checking. Not urgently, not with panic, but with enough respect to not let them sit for too long. They get things looked at early, and more often than not, the issue is small and manageable. The car stays consistent because problems are handled before they grow. The other owner notices the same things but chooses to wait. It's not neglect in a careless sense, it's just the belief that if the car is still running, it can wait. And since nothing fails right away, that belief keeps getting reinforced. But this is where the long-term difference begins to form, because cars rarely go from perfect to broken overnight. They shift gradually. One owner keeps that shift under control. The other lets it continue until it becomes something much harder to manage. Daily driving habits that add up over time. Now it's the time to step away from obvious mistakes, because a lot of long-term damage doesn't come from doing something wrong. It comes from doing something that feels completely normal. Both owners use their cars every day. Same commute, same errands, same kind of routine. But the way those miles are built is very different, and over time, that difference starts to show. One owner ends up giving the car a proper run more often. The engine reaches its normal operating temperature, stays there for a while, and everything inside works the way it was designed to. The other owner's pattern is mostly short trips, 5 to 10 minutes, engine off, then the same cycle repeated multiple times a day. Now here's something most people don't realize. Short trips are actually one of the toughest conditions for any engine. According to automotive studies, a large percentage of engine wear happens before the engine fully warms up. On top of that, repeated short drives can lead to moisture buildup inside the engine, which slowly affects oil quality and internal components. Real-world example, cars used mainly for short city trips often start showing issues much earlier. You'll see things like carbon buildup, reduced fuel efficiency, and in some cases even premature battery failure, because the battery never gets enough time to fully recharge. In contrast, cars that regularly get longer drives tend to stay more stable over time. Fuel quality also plays a role, especially in regions where consistency isn't guaranteed. Lower quality fuel can lead to deposits forming inside the engine, affecting performance and efficiency over time. Then add traffic, constant braking, rough roads, and stop-start conditions, and the car rarely gets a chance to operate smoothly for long. So even though both owners feel like they're just using the car normally, one is allowing the car to settle into a healthy rhythm, while the other is putting it through repeated stress cycles that slowly take a toll. Saving money the wrong way can cost you big. Now let's talk about something almost every owner does at some point, and it doesn't feel like a mistake when you're doing it. In fact, it often feels like the smart thing to do, trying to save a bit of money on maintenance. Both owners spend on their cars, that's normal, but the way they approach those decisions starts to separate them over time. One owner looks at maintenance as something that protects the car long term. When a part needs replacing, they go for something that matches the car's requirements. Not necessarily the most expensive option, but not the cheapest either. Just something that does the job properly and lasts the way it should. The other owner approaches it differently. They look for ways to reduce the cost each time. A cheaper oil, a lower grade filter, brake pads that are good enough, or even skipping certain replacements because the car is still running. And to be fair, in the moment, nothing seems wrong. The car starts, drives, and doesn't give any immediate reason to question that decision. But this is where things quietly start shifting. Take something as simple as an oil filter or air filter. A lower quality one might save a small amount, but it doesn't trap particles the same way. Over time, more contaminants make their way into the engine. The same applies to fluids. Lower grade oil breaks down faster, especially in hot conditions, which increases internal wear without showing instant symptoms. Mechanics see this pattern all the time. Cars that consistently use lower quality parts often start showing issues earlier than expected. Reduced engine smoothness, higher fuel consumption, and more frequent repairs. What looked like saving $20 or $30 per service slowly turns into hundreds, and eventually thousands in avoidable repairs. So the difference isn't about spending more, it's about avoiding the kind of savings that quietly cost you later. By year 10, you can feel the difference. Now move things forward to around the 10-year mark, because this is where you stop relying on assumptions and start noticing things for yourself. Up to this point, both cars have done everything they were supposed to do. They've handled daily driving, traffic, long trips, nothing unusual. But now, the difference between those two owners becomes something you can actually feel the moment you drive the car. In one case, the car still feels settled. The engine runs the way you expect it to, the response is smooth, and there's a sense that everything is still working together properly. It doesn't feel new anymore, but it doesn't feel worn out either. This is what you usually see with cars that have been looked after consistently. Even after 150,000 miles or more, they still feel predictable and easy to live with. Now step into the other one, and the experience starts to change. Nothing looks completely broken, and that's what confuses people. The car still runs, it still moves, but something feels off. The engine doesn't feel as clean as it used to, the shifts aren't as smooth, and there's a slight sense that the car is working harder than before. It's not one major issue. It's a collection of small changes that slowly take away the confidence you once had in it. This is usually the stage where owners start visiting workshops more often. Not for one big repair, but for a series of smaller ones that keep coming up. And that's where the reality starts to sink in. Because at this point, you're not just looking at a 10-year-old car. You're feeling the result of how it has been treated over those years. By year 20, only one car is still standing. Let's bring this forward to the point where you don't need to analyze anything anymore, and you can simply look at the outcome and understand what happened. Around the 20-year mark, a car stops being about features or specs. It comes down to something much simpler. Is it still dependable, and does it still feel worth keeping in your life? At this stage, the difference between those two owners becomes very clear. In one case, the car is still part of daily use. It may not feel brand new, but it still starts reliably, still drives the way it should, and still gives the owner a sense of confidence every time they get behind the wheel. Now, you'll often see cars like a Toyota Corolla or a Honda Civic reach 200,000 to 300,000 miles when they've been handled with consistency over the years. That doesn't happen by chance. It's usually the result of small habits done right again and again without much attention. Now compare that to the other side. That same car with the same starting point often doesn't reach this stage in the same condition, and in many cases it doesn't reach it at all. Over time, small issues begin to show up more frequently. Repairs become less predictable, and the car starts demanding more attention than it used to. It's rarely one major breakdown that changes everything. More often, it's a series of smaller problems that build up and slowly change how the car feels and how much effort it takes to keep it running. And this is the part that matters. That difference isn't created at year 20. It's shaped much earlier through habits that repeat over time. By the time you reach this point, the direction has already been decided. One car continues because it was kept in a steady condition. The other struggles because it gradually moved away from it. So, which owner are you right now? Now here's the part that actually matters, and it's not about those two cars anymore. It's about you. Because if you really think about it, almost everyone starts with good intentions. Nobody buys a car thinking they're going to shorten its life. Everyone expects it to last, especially when it's something known for reliability, like a Toyota Corolla or a Honda Civic. That expectation isn't wrong, but what we've talked about today shows something most people overlook. It's not one big decision that shapes the life of a car. It's the small, everyday choices that don't feel important in the moment. The kind of things you don't think twice about until they start showing up in how the car feels, how it behaves, and how long it actually stays with you. So the real question is simple, and be honest with yourself here. Which side are you closer to right now? Are you the one who deals with things early, keeps things consistent, and quietly builds a car that lasts? Or are you the one who keeps pushing things a little further because it's still running? No judgment here. Most people don't even realize where they stand until they start seeing the results. But the good part is, this isn't fixed. You can change direction at any point, and even small adjustments from here can make a big difference over time. So tell us honestly in the comments, which type of owner do you think you are right now? And if you want, tell us about your car too. If you're driving a Japanese car and want to know how to take care of it the right way, we're here for that. Tell us in the comments what you want to learn, and we'll break it down for you. And if this helped you see your car a little differently, make sure you like the video, subscribe, and stay with us, because we're here to help you keep your car running the way it should for as long as possible.